Welcome to the late years of the Nintendo Wii, 2010, 2011, and 2012, where Nintendo, as a whole, lost their goddamn minds. Now, that's a pretty harsh thing to say, but I think Nintendo was wildly off on its expectations on what its consumer base would do. I think they thought that its Wii system would continue to sell on the back of Wii Sports and Wii Fit and Smash Brothers and Mario Kart and New Super Mario Brothers Wii and all those really popular games. And they weren't totally wrong about that. There was a time in 2010 where some of those older games were still amongst the top 10 games that selling across the world for that year. They were really popular games, and there was some truth to the fact that they would be perennial titles. But at a certain point, people play games. They want to play new games. If there is not a new game on the console, they're probably not going to continue to buy it. Because at this point, in 2010, they had sold a ton of Wiis. And I don't know if they just reached the point where everyone who was going to buy a Wii bought one, or the people that would have bought a Wii at that point went, well, they're not really making any new games for the system, and I didn't purchase the thing when all these other games came out, so why should I buy it now? Obviously, I'm not that interested. Either way, it was definitely a time where Nintendo didn't make that many new games. Other developers made even less for their console. And as their business started slipping when it came to Wii's being sold and games being bought, Xbox and PlayStation started getting a little bit better. They actually started catching up. Eventually their sales would go down as well, as people were interested in the new console generation, not the old one. But their demise was slower. And so they caught up. And so Nintendo didn't have a lead quite as much as it used to. I know I definitely was jealous of the people that had a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox, because I'm sitting there as a Wii gamer going, okay, I've got like 2 games coming out at all practically that are even worthy of me looking at, and the people with the PlayStation and the Xbox are getting the Mass Effect 3s and new Bioshocks and new this and new that and Assassin's Creed and all these things that, well, part of that is having the support of the other developers. They got new games. They got new big budget worthy games of looking at. Nintendo got pretty much their own stuff and not that much of it even then. And it kind of sucked. Like, the bottom line is people play video games on video game systems. And at that point in time, the Wii's legacy then, or reputation, was, yeah, I've got a Wii, but I haven't played it in like a year. Like, for that person, they haven't had any reason to turn it on and play a new game because they haven't been sold a new game. They're just not out there. This was definitely a point in time where Nintendo stopped making games for whatever reason. This period of time I'm talking about too is when they came out with the 3DS, so there was definitely a focus on that 3DS, I guess, but they didn't make that many games for it either. Like, the 3DS's problem when it came out is the Wii U's problem now, in that it came out, it was $250, it was a good piece of hardware, but there was no reason to buy it. Like, you had a couple games out for it that were sort of kind of old school. Like, I think the 3DS had like a remake from the N64 era, but nobody bought it at first. So they had a quick price cut, and they had to start making games for it. And now it's doing well. Imagine how well it would have been doing if they had nailed it the first time. They hadn't had like a terrible first year of sales and all that. Like, I didn't pick up a 3DS until they started making games for it, and it was the same for a lot of people. Wii U is right in the middle of having that problem. And in fact, yesterday, I found out that the Wii U, this is, I don't know how telling this is. This is like this perfect timing. The Wii U has gotten passed by the PlayStation 4 in terms of overall sales numbers. So even though it had like a year in advance, the Wii U has been passed up. This mistake has been a long time coming. In this era that I'm talking about right now for the Wii and the 3DS, it was the first time that Nintendo lost money on a quarterly basis or yearly basis. I don't really remember. It was the first time they lost money in like 20 years. Like, it was bad. Nintendo never loses money as a company, and they did. Because they just didn't make any games and didn't provide a reason for people to purchase its services. If I am a company and I am not giving you a reason to pay me money, I am failing. That is what Nintendo did right now. Or right in this era. They had the lead, and I don't know if it was arrogance, I don't know if it was misguided expectations, I don't know if it was poor business planning, or just fear of the future and what the next console generation would mean. Because a lot of companies seem to fear the next console generation. They just frittered it all away. And that, to me, was just incredibly disappointing. Just so frustrating. But still, there were some games that came out during this time frame that were worthy of your playing, or at least me discussing it. And we'll have both of those types of titles here in the next few videos. I think the first one we're going to talk about, because for me, this is like one of the last big games I played as it came out for the Nintendo Wii, Donkey Kong Country Returns.